Hello Nintendo Wii here, welcome back to Let's Play Retro Games, and today I'm going to be talking you through my Sega Saturn collection. So here it is. I'm going to go through each game individually, tell you a little bit about where I got it from and what I think of it, and a bit about the system as well. So this is my original Sega Saturn that I picked up. I didn't have one when it came out. I played a little bit of it at friends around that time, but I didn't actually get my own Sega Saturn until about 2006 or 7. It was just after Knight's Journey of Dreams had come out on the Wii, and I was really interested in that game and that series because I'd heard a lot about the original, so I did a bit of research online, watched a few videos, and I thought I really need to play this game. It looks amazing. So I ordered a Sega Saturn off eBay. It came with a few games, but unfortunately the system didn't work, so I ordered another one with a few more games. That's why I sort of started with a fairly good collection anyway. So this is actually my second Sega Saturn, but the first one that actually worked. So I just need to also mention here, while I'm on the topic of Sega Saturn systems, that I picked up this nice region-free modded Sega Saturn that lets you play any region of game, and it also lets you play in 50 and 60 Hz. But before that, I actually got for Christmas one year a Japanese Saturn, so that's why I've already got quite a few Japanese Saturn games, in case anyone was wondering. And that brings me on to the first game I've got here, and by far my favourite game for the system, one of my favourite games of all time, Nights into Dreams for the Sega Saturn. So what can I say about this game? This was Sonic Team's first game for the Sega Saturn, and I'm sure a lot of people were disappointed it wasn't a Sonic game, but I absolutely love it. The controls, I was just blown away by how colourful, fast and fun the game was, and from doing the research, I loved the whole idea of them researching dreams to make the actual levels really stand out. So really amazing game on every aspect. The music, the graphics, the gameplay. The gameplay is phenomenal. I've also got the 3D controller for the Saturn as well, which is basically a prototype Dreamcast controller, but it makes playing this game a lot more fun. And I'm sure, you know, if you're into retro gaming at all, that there was also a Nights into Dreams Christmas edition, which I do try and play every single year at Christmas. This actually came in a magazine in the UK, that's why it's in this little cardboard box, and it's basically just one level of the game, but it's all Christmas themed, and if you play it on Christmas Day you can open up Christmas presents and stuff. It's a really nice addition to the library, and it's a really nice bit of history as well. It's not even too expensive considering it was just a magazine thing, so fairly easy to pick up if you're trying to look for some Saturn games. So the next game we have here, one that I just picked up the other day from the London Gaming Market. If you saw my pickups video, you will have already seen this. This is Sega Ages Volume 1. I've played it a little bit, and I have to say that the conversions are arcade perfect. It really is great. I've played all three of the games before, Space Harrier, Afterburner and Outrun, but it's great to have them all in one collection. Next up we have Sonic Jam. When I got the Saturn, it came with Sonic Jam, and I actually said to someone at the time that the Sega Saturn is obviously better than the Mega Drive times 3 because it has 3 of the best Mega Drive games in one disc. I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but it is true that it has 3 of the best Mega Drive games on one disc, plus Sonic and Knuckles, so there's actually 4. Really great ports of the games, and I believe in this one, if you play Sonic 1, you can actually do Spin Dash as well, which is always great to have in the original Sonic game, because that game can be really difficult to build up speed. Next, this is a game that came with the system that I got off eBay originally. Really great racing game. Of course I played it in the arcades back in the day. It's Sega Rally. Not really much more that can be said about this game. It's a very simple game, but it is very smooth on the Saturn. The graphics, considering the Saturn's not great with 3D, the graphics were really nice in this, and I actually did get the steering wheel to go with it as well, the one that's like a bow shape. I did show that in a video that I made a long time ago. I'll put it in the description anyway if you want to go and check it out. It was my top 10 Sega Saturn games video. So that was Sega Rally. And the next one we have here, this one's a more recent pickup. I got this one from Kex and it was very expensive. Another game made by Sonic Team for the Saturn. This is Burning Rangers, and what an amazing game this is. It's never been re-released on anything because the Saturn's very hard to re-release any of the games because of emulation problems, so the only way you can actually play it is on the Sega Saturn itself, and that's probably why the game's gone right up in price. It's over £100 now, but if you like Sega and you want to play a more obscure game from them, then I can definitely recommend this. The graphics are very impressive. Once again, I'm very impressed by the graphics. The audio design in this game is fantastic, because when you're playing through the game you actually can press a button to get directions, and someone will actually come and talk to you through the headset to give you directions around the stages. And the stages are really big and varied too, so definitely one of my favourite games for the Saturn, Burning Rangers. Next up, another new game that I picked up just the other day, so you've already seen this one. This is Shining Wisdom. I've given it a little bit of a play and it definitely reminds me a lot of Link to the Past or the earlier Zelda games, with a kind of strange mechanic where you have to mash the A or B button to run, and you can sort of run into enemies and knock them over. It's quite strange, but the graphics and gameplay so far seem really nice. I need to give it another go. That was Shining Wisdom. Next up, one of my favourite games. This one was actually a game that my friend who had a Sega Saturn back when it came out used to really love, and he recommended me this game. This is Clockwork Night. Reminds me very much of something like Toy Story. You basically go around the levels as this Clockwork Knight, and you have to wind up the enemies with a key, and it's a really nice little 2.5D platformer. And I've also got a sequel in there as well. Both games are definitely worth getting. Next up, another game that came with the system. Not too keen on this one. It's got a few neat ideas, it's got a few different gameplay styles. This is Hard Trilogy. I hear that Hard Arcade is a lot better, but it's also a lot more expensive. So if you think I should get that one, then I will definitely be having a look on eBay for it. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but I am looking for recommendations. So if anyone wants to leave a comment down below, let me know some Saturn games that I don't have in this collection that I should try out. So please let me know, because I'm definitely on the lookout for more. I've actually been bidding on quite a few, so maybe I'll do an update to this video depending on if I win any. So that was Hard Trilogy. Next up, another trilogy, and this one's actually a really good game. Obviously these days it's quite dated as it's a first-person shooter. In the Doom sort of vein, this is Alien Trilogy. I do really like it. You can play as the alien or as the Marines hunting down the aliens, and it's a lot better than that new game that just came out, Colonial Marines. So it's one of the better Alien games out there, so I definitely recommend this one. It's a lot of fun. And what have we got here? Earthworm Jim 2. An absolute classic. In my opinion, not as good as the first one, but I haven't really played it that much to judge it too much. But it's definitely got that same sense of humour, and the graphics on the Saturn are incredible, so you really can't go too wrong with Earthworm Jim. Whether you play the Mega Drive one or the Saturn one, you're in for a great time. And we have another game that I picked up from the London market. I actually got the name wrong of it in that video. It's actually called Trash It, not Thrash It. I did play it a little bit and it's very, very strange. I really don't know what to think. You basically run around, you've got a hammer, and you have to break blocks and get to the exit, but sometimes the blocks can fall on your head and you'll get squished. So in that sense it kind of reminded me of like one of the Wario Land games, but nowhere near as good. But it's fairly interesting, and I think it's a PAL exclusive as well, which is kind of cool, I suppose. Next one here, an arcade classic that was slightly downscaled for the home console release. This is Daytona USA. It's an amazing game, even though it's got a lot of pop-in on the Saturn. It's really fun to play it with the steering wheel that I mentioned earlier. Very arcadey. I'm sure if you've been in an arcade in the 90s, then you must have seen Daytona USA around there somewhere. Apparently there's a Dreamcast version which improves a lot on this game, but I haven't got that one, so definitely go back to this one now and then, just for a bit of arcade racing action. It's what Sega does best, after all. I'm just going to make a bit more room. And the next game we have here, I'll talk about these two together because they're more or less the same kind of game. This is Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2. The original Panzer Dragoon is probably my second favourite game on the Saturn. I absolutely love this game. It feels like the next evolution of something like Space Harrier, which was on that Sega Ages collection. Absolutely love this game to bits. I've played it over and over again back in the day when I got my Saturn, and it works really well with the 3D controller as well. So if you've got a 3D controller and you're looking for some games to play with it, Panzer Dragoon 1 and 2 are definitely right up there. It's got such a unique style. They both play pretty much the same, so I'm kind of saying this about both of them. The graphics on the second one are slightly better, but I prefer the level designs of the first one. Either way, you really can't go wrong, and of course, there's also Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is incredibly expensive. It was at the London market for 350 quid, which is just insane. These two you can get for about 10 to 20, so definitely recommend these. And I think they've been released on the PS2 or something a bit more recently, but the Saturn version's where it's at really. So what we've got here, Clockwork Night 2. As I mentioned in the first one, it's more of the same. Really, really fun 2D, 2.5D platformer. It shakes things up a little bit by moving the camera around, sort of like Klonoa, where you go off the side of the level and you come back on around the corner. So it's really nice. I'd recommend both of the games. This one's a bit harder to find though. And for some reason, I have another copy of Daytona USA. I think I've got a few duplicates actually. They must have come with the Saturn when I got it off eBay. So next up is a classic, of course, Rayman. Exactly the same as the PS1 version. I don't know how it compares to the Jaguar version because I've never played that one, but I absolutely love Rayman. My first encounter with this particular game was on the Game Boy Advance. So playing it on the Saturn, you can kind of see where they downscaled things for the GBA. The graphics and the music and the gameplay in the original Rayman in particular are outstanding. They really hold up even today. I was playing it last night and it's still really amazing, the level of detail in the graphics, and it's just a really fun game overall. It is very challenging though, so if you're not too good at platformers, maybe I'd give this one a miss until you're a bit more, until you feel a bit more confident in your platforming skills, but definitely an amazing game. And we have here one of my favourite shoot-em-ups ever. I grew up on the SNES game, so I was very excited to find this one about 3 or 4 years ago at the market in Birmingham, so I snapped it up straight away. This is Parodius, a really crazy series of shooting games. This is by far the best version that I've ever played. The CD quality audio just really makes it stand out compared to the SNES, the NES, the Game Boy, the TurboGrafx, everything else. This one just blows all them clean out of the water. The Saturn is incredible for 2D sprite-based games, and this game really shows that. Just look at this gameplay over here. Really can't say enough good things about any of the Parodius games, but if you're going to get one of them, get the Saturn one. And here we go, a very controversial game. One of my personal favourites, Sonic R. Personal favourite just for the music alone. The gameplay can be a bit iffy, the controls feel a little bit strange, but at the time I really, really loved it. I completed it 100%, unlocked all the characters, did all the time trials, even did that little balloon chase minigame. I really love Sonic R. There's not a lot to the game, there's only like 5 levels, but because I've played them over and over and over again, they've really got ingrained in my head and I just absolutely love it. I'm sure I even used to sing along back in the day, so that's Sonic R. Very indecisive game, but I absolutely love it. And it's also on the GameCube on the Sonic Gems collection, and they kind of cleaned it up a little bit, so I would actually recommend that version over the Saturn one for that particular game. Next up, we have what was being touted as one of the very first 3D platformers, but actually it's sort of a 2D platformer that you can go into the screen with. It's a really interesting concept. It kind of reminds me of something like Pac-Man. It's called Bug. There's also a sequel called Bug 2, which I don't actually have just yet. One of them has a cameo of Sonic, and that's kind of how I found out about the game in the first place. But even on its own, it is a really, really fun, I don't want to call it a 3D platformer. It's a 2D platformer with a maze built around it, but if you're looking for something a bit unique, then I'd definitely recommend Bug, because it is a lot of fun and it's also fairly cheap. And it is a first-party Sega game as well, so it's kind of a series I've never gone back to. And here we have a Jeff Minter classic. I picked this one up at a gaming market back in 2014 or 15, I think. There's a video of me getting a pickup of this, and I also did a Retro Gamer Week video about it, back when that was a thing a few years ago. Tempest 2000. It also includes the original arcade version of Tempest. I'm sure if you've seen any of Jeff Minter's games, or Llamasoft as they're called, you know exactly what to expect with this. Just really psychedelic gameplay and crazy backgrounds, power-ups, the whole works here, so really recommend this. And it's also another game that was on the Jaguar, and it was never released on Nintendo or anything, so really recommend Tempest 2000, if you like those sort of arcade-style games anyway. Another game that I'd really recommend if you like 2.5D platformers like Clockwork Night, this one is Pandemonium. There's also a sequel to it. I don't have the sequel, but Pandemonium, the original, I absolutely love. It's got a really, really unique setting. For some reason, around that time, I loved things with jesters in. I don't know if it was because it was related to Nights into Dreams or something, but I was really excited to play this and it did not let me down. I actually brought this up in my top 10 Sega Saturn games video, but I remembered playing this back when I was only like 5 years old, a little child's play park thing. They had a Sega Saturn hooked up to the TV, and Pandemonium was the game that you could play on it. So before I even got this game, I'd already had a lot of experience, and I definitely recommend it if you like Klonoa or Clockwork Night, like I said. Next up, if you're into your fighting games, then this is definitely a fighting game for you. This is Virtua Fighter 2. They improved a lot over the first one, and the graphics are really, really nice and smooth. It was sort of just becoming a thing having 3D fighting games. I think the original Tekken had just come out, and this was sort of Sega's answer to that on the Saturn, and they're both great games, but if you've only got a Saturn, then you can't go wrong with Virtua Fighter 2. Apparently the Saturn is great for 2D fighting games as well, but I don't actually have any of them yet. I'd really like to get the Street Fighter games, and I know there's a few Marvel ones out there which look cool too. Next up we have, this is the first release of it. I know there was also Wipeout 2049 or something after, but this is the original Wipeout. Really great arcade style, futuristic racing game. Basically the other consoles answer to F-Zero because obviously that's a Nintendo first party game, but you really can't go wrong with Wipeout. The PlayStation version's maybe slightly better. The Saturn kind of makes the 3D a bit weird on this one, but still really nice and smooth game, and I do love the whole Wipeout series just because it's got weapons, and that's something that F-Zero doesn't have, so kind of gives a new spin on the sort of gameplay, so really enjoy Wipeout. And here's another racing game. This one's another arcade style racing game. I'm sure they had it in the arcade where you could actually sit on the motorbike and lean left and right. I'm sure you've seen that before. This is Manx TT Superbike. It's actually really fun. It reminds me a lot of Super Hang-On from Shenmue. That's where I played Super Hang-On anyway. I know it's in the arcade and on the Mega Drive, but all my experience with Hang-On is from Shenmue. Manx TT Superbike is basically a 3D version of that, and it's really fun, and surprisingly the graphics are very, very smooth, and so is the gameplay to go along with it. So really recommend that if you're after racing games, and it's not too expensive either. Next up, an arcade classic. I absolutely love this series, so I was very excited to get Bubble Bobble. And this also has Rainbow Islands in it as well, which I'm not too keen on in comparison, but to have them both in one collection is really great. They're really, really fun games, and this is probably the best way you can experience them on a console, just because there's a few different ones in the collection. I know in Japan they also had Bubble Symphony, which I'd really like to get because that's like the next Bubble Bobble game after this one, so definitely on the lookout for that one. But yeah, really recommend Bubble Bobble collection for the Saturn. And we've got 4 more PAL ones, then I'm going to go over some Japanese ones. Hope you're enjoying this so far. Let me know down below if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I'm doing my SNES games next because I did do a poll on Twitter and on YouTube, and that's the one that came up. But for now I'll carry on with the Saturn games, but let me know if there's any other systems you'd like me to go through. So here we have a very important game in the Saturn's library. It's one that a lot of people talk about. This is Guardian Heroes by the amazing developers Treasure. They've made a lot of amazing games in the past, and this one is no exception. It's a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up, sort of like Streets of Rage or Golden Axe, but the amazing thing about this is there's a lot of customization, there's a lot of RPG elements which really give the game a lot more lasting appeal compared to something like that. The graphics are incredible. I was really blown away playing this game on my CRT, just absolutely stunning graphics. The controls get a little bit of getting used to because it also has a mechanic where you sort of jump into the foreground and the background, which is a bit strange and a bit hard to get used to, but when you do and everything clicks into place, this is one of the best games on the Saturn, and it's worth the price in my opinion. So that's Guardian Heroes. The next game here, Virtual On. Not Virtua On, I like to call it. It's called Virtual On. And it also came with a really interesting controller, which I don't have, but I would definitely like to get it in the future. It's got 2 joysticks that you move independently to sort of move your robot around, because the actual controls using a normal Saturn pad are a bit awkward to use. I did struggle quite a lot to turn the camera around and face the enemies, so I think that would improve the game a lot, but I do really like it either way. It's a really great arcade style game. And I've said that a lot about these games here, but I really do think Sega was at the top of their game during the, well, through the 16-bit to the 128-bit. You really couldn't go wrong with the Saturn, the Dreamcast, or the Mega Drive for arcade conversions. And this one is just another game to add to that set of amazing arcade experiences in the home. So that was Virtua On. Next up, I'm just really quickly going to go over these two games because, to be honest, I haven't played them. These are two that came with buy one get one free deal in GameStation. As you can see, they were only $1.99 each at the time. If you think they're any good, I might give them a go later, but to be honest, I haven't played them. I just bought them because GameStation was selling off some games really cheap. So pick them up. They are Hardcore 4x4 and Firestorm Thunderhawk 2. So I don't really know anything about these two, but maybe I'll give them a go after this video because I do feel kind of bad about not playing them now. So I'll put them over there, and I'm going to go straight into my Japanese Saturn games. I've not got too many, but we'll start here with a game that I picked up in a new shop that had opened up in Warsaw. It's actually closed down already. I don't think it actually lasted very long. It was a very small shop, but they did have some nice games on offer. So I picked up Bubble Bobble 2X for the Japanese Saturn. You really can't go wrong with Bubble Bobble. I'm sure you all know it. A lot of people know it these days as that Witch Saga Candy Crush thingy on the iPhone and Android, but this is where it started, so go back and play the original. Don't play this crappy iPhone version that's making you pay to get past every stage. So really can't go wrong with this. Another amazing arcade conversion. Obviously it's a Neo Geo game at heart, but it plays really well on the Saturn. And I guess this is a good time to bring up this controller here, the Sega Saturn arcade stick. I actually found this in Chester in a market when I went to visit my sister at uni, and we were having a look around and I just couldn't help but pick this up. And I had to walk around the rest of the day with it, going through the streets, but even so I'm really happy with it. It's got a really nice analog stick, really nice clicky buttons, really gives you that arcade experience, and it's also metal as well, so it's really sturdy on the table, so definitely recommend one of these. If you're into fighting games, puzzle games like Bubble Bobble, or if you're into shooting games, vertical scrolling shooting games, which I hear the Saturn is amazing for. I've got a big list of ones that I want to get, but you know, time and money, plus they're really hard to find. So if you've got any recommendations for vertical or horizontal scrolling shoot 'em ups, let me know in the comments. But let's carry on here. I've got another version of Nights into Dreams. This one's the Japanese one. It's exactly the same game, so I won't go over that. And yet another one. This is Christmas Nights into Dreams. I think in Japan it actually came as its own game rather than with the magazine. So there's the Japanese version of Christmas Nights. And I just got them to add to my Nights collection because I did get I got kind of addicted to Nights back in the day, and I've also got the First Four Figures Night statue over there, which I'll grab in a bit, I think. Here's one that I picked up the other day. This one's called Robo Pit. Fairly interesting game. It's sort of like a Me Maker, where you build your robot and then you send it out into battles and fight with them. Really interesting game. Was kind of enjoying it the other night. We have here, no idea what it says, but I think it's called Magical Pop, or Pop and Magic or something. I did a Let's Play retro games video of it a while ago, so I'll put that in the description if you want to see some more. It's just your standard Neo Geo style puzzle game, but it's really fun. Here's another game that I picked up the other day. I did look up what it's called. It's called Baku Baku Animal, and I was really excited when I put this game in and found out that it was actually a really, really fun game, the sort of Puyo Pop style. You basically drop fruit and then you have to line up a different animal that eats the fruit or the food that you dropped, and it chomps along the path. It's really, really fun. I've recorded some gameplay, so I'll put it over here on the right or the left. I don't know which way you're facing, but yeah, it's really, really interesting, so definitely recommend it. And I also found out that it did come out in the UK as Baku Baku Animal, so maybe I'll pick it up, but there's really no language barrier, so don't really need to. Next one here, another Sega arcade classic. This one actually came out in the arcade quite a while before the Saturn. It was actually on the Mega Drive originally, and it came in that big VFX cartridge. This is Virtua Racing. Yeah, Virtua, not Virtual, like Virtual On, that's where I'm getting confused. Virtua Racing is extremely basic. I don't really know what else to say. It's nowhere near the same level as Ridge Racer or something like that, but if you do enjoy fairly simple, rudimentary 3D racing games, definitely give it a go if it's not too expensive. I know they're also making Racing Apex, which is coming out on PC later in the year, which looks incredible, and they did actually get their inspiration from Virtua Racer, so it's interesting from a historical point of view, but it's not really a game that I'd go back to and play over and over again. The next one we have here, and I absolutely love this game. I loved it on the PlayStation and I'm very excited to get the Saturn version. This is Tetris Plus. As you saw in my pickups video, if you saw that from the London gaming market, huge fan of Tetris Plus. I love that extra mode where you have to try and help the man get down to the bottom. Absolutely fantastic, my favourite version of Tetris. Definitely recommend it. And another classic for the Saturn, Saturn Bomberman. This was the first Bomberman to support, I think, up to 10 players at once. And I have actually seen that at one of these many retro gaming conventions that I've been to, so I have been lucky enough to try it out. You need to have 2 different multi-taps connected to the Saturn and loads of different controllers, so it's very hard to actually get set up, and then you've also got to find the people to play it with. But if you ever manage to get that many people that are interested in Saturn Bomberman in one room, then definitely recommend getting this game. It's really good, and it also has quite an in-depth single-player campaign mode to go along with it, so really recommend that. Probably the best Saturn game ever. I mean, the best Bomberman game ever. Not the best Saturn game, that's Nights into Dreams, obviously. Right, down to the last 5 or 4 games now. This has been a very long video, so thank you for sticking with me if you're still here. And I'm amazed I've managed to do it all in one take as well. So the next one here, another puzzle game. I do really love my puzzle games, plus the fact that if it's a puzzle game there's no language barrier, so it doesn't really matter whether you pick up the Japanese or the UK versions. This one is Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, I think, or just Super Puzzle Fighter 2. It's basically your average puzzle game where you fight against an opponent, much like Street Fighter. It's got really classic Street Fighter characters and animations, but instead of fighting on the streets, you're fighting with random blocks. Maybe blocks that they've taken out of buildings and start throwing at each other or something, but it's a really good game, and I know there's a few different versions of it. It's also a very competitive game if you have someone else to play it with too. And we have here one of the only 2D shoot-em-ups I actually have. I'd love to get some more. This one's called Lair Section. I think it came out in the UK and America as Raystorm or something like that, I'm not entirely sure, but it's a really great arcade vertical scrolling shooting game. Really can't recommend it enough. It's one of the best shooting games, and it's also not too expensive. Not like something like Radiant Silvergun, which goes for hundreds of pounds these days. So yeah, if you're after a fairly affordable shooting game for the system that is known for shooting games, this is a great place to start. And here we have Fighters Megamix, which is obviously a fighting game. It's a 3D fighting game, and it has lots of characters from lots of different series in it. So if you're into your fighting games and you want something a bit different to Virtua Fighter, definitely recommend Fighters Megamix. It plays really well. And the last game we have here, oh, we've already gone through this one. This is Sonic R again, but the Japanese version. So there we go. That was my first game collection video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, as I said earlier, if you want to see any more of these. I'm going to do the SNES one next, because in that poll, I did just check now and the SNES one actually came out ahead of the Saturn one, but at the time of getting all this set up, the Saturn one was actually in the lead, so don't worry, you will see the SNES one as well. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave a comment down below if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Please subscribe. It's great to see so many new subscribers. I've noticed that there's a lot more now, so hello to everyone. It's really great to have you here. Hope you stick around and go back and watch some of my earlier videos if you want as well. So that's all for now. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.